Clap your hands if you believe in fairies. Peter Pan's famous command to the young at heart to save Tinkerbell would seem to tell us that the fantasy genre provides a whimsical way to pretend that the impossible and fantastical are real. But this conventional definition is only partially true. Some fantasy films are pure escapism with magic that amazes children. But more evolved fantasy films stretch the ordinary understanding of reality for a higher, more serious purpose. These fantasy films encourage an expanded sense of the possibilities that are necessary if we are to avoid a cliched and limited attitude towards our lives. They often provide an escape from a repressive, culturally bound world, offering a critique, engaging in social criticism and philosophical speculation. The fantasy film has taken many shapes in its long history, but one constant characteristic is that it has a what if rather than a this is quality. Fantasy characters and stories are products of asking what would happen if someone knew more than ordinary humans, if they were stronger, smarter, or more creative. While the what if premise is also crucial to horror and science fiction, in the fantasy film, this premise is based on magic. These films are not driven by fear or science. The what if factor is based on some inexplicable force. The strange things that happen in fantasy films often challenge our faith in reality, in the stability of our own identity. Fantasy transformation suggests the wonderful consequences of expanding our point of view. They often show that we must look to the power within ourselves for transformation and growth. Woody Allen often includes fantasy elements in his films, most notably in The Purple Rose of Cairo. He famously said that he hates reality and cites his childhood where he often retreated from it at the movies. In his films, he makes a strong case that fantasy is inextricably a part of the world that we live in when we take the need for human happiness into the equation. Allen seems to be saying that through magic and fantasy, we can break away from our troubled, mundane lives and start over. The social meanings in such fantasies is therefore very clear. The intentionally socially relevant fantasy film also expands its horizons to the problems of the world at large. Following the devastation of the Great Depression, the 1937 film Lost Horizon, where 5 Americans and Britons crash into the mountains of Tibet and discover a secret utopia called Shangri-La, where no one is sick or poor as everything is provided for by the community, articulates the ideals of Roosevelt's New Deal, really pushing the envelope of the fantasy film. And The Wizard of Oz from 1939 also depicts the longing to escape to a better, anxiety-free place. This is expressed so poignantly in the song Over the Rainbow, which could easily stand in as the theme song for the entire fantasy genre. But Oz contains not only a beautiful fantasy land, but also imaginative components that spoke to people in countries across the world as their states began to lift them out of financial turmoil while facing a new challenge, the international storm brewing in Germany that would become World War II. Made at a time when dictators like Hitler, Stalin and Mussolini were rising, the film is eerily prescient in its gentle way about the danger of people putting their destinies in the hands of those who aspire to be all-powerful. The fantasy of this omnipotence has continued to be played out in many movies since Oz, though. The escapist fantasy of going beyond ordinary human limits has been popular for many decades. Think of movies like Freaky Friday and Big, where the protagonists get a chance to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. The boundary between fantasy and reality has steadily become a central issue in other popular and important fantasy films. Among the most provocative of these are Edward Scissorhands, Donnie Darko, and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Although certainly part of the fantasy genre, these films have an auteuristic edge. This means that the personal vision of the director is what really propels the story. In 1954, Francois Truffaut wrote an essay entitled A Certain Tendency in French Cinema. In this work, he claimed that film is a great medium for expressing the personal ideas of the director. He suggested that this meant that the director should therefore be regarded as an auteur. The director is really the actual author of the film. Like Woody Allen films, Tim Burton's views about the place of fantasy in modern life are embedded in Edward Scissorhands. It's a film about difference and the perception of such difference as dangerous. Here's a clip from the film.
It's all right. Go back to bed. Go back to bed. This way.
Edward's coming here with us. There is nothing to be upset about. No, it's okay.
Okay, we'll have you sit up here in a minute. Get a full queen-size bed here. It's all made and everything. Good. There you go. What's the matter? What's wrong? She get you nervous? You've been cloistered away up in that castle too long. You don't know anything about the wonderful world of teenage girls. They're all crazy. Here, some straighten right out.
What is it?
Lemonade. I don't know what it is. They reach a certain age, they develop these gland things, their bodies swell up. They go crazy.
And so you can see that difference can be frightening for some, but for others, there is no perception of threat at all. Burton challenges us to think beyond the conformist ideology of reality. Far from luring us away from life, fantasy can actually make us think of ways to make for ourselves a new reality, a much better reality. Fantasy films seem to be telling us that life is what we make of it. These days, that capacity for fantasy films to stretch the boundaries of reality have gone even further. They take us to another world, but give us stories that are entirely familiar and reflective of our real-world condition. Films like the Hunger Games trilogy take us inside a dystopian, futuristic reality show. There's a sophistication to the films, according to Wes Bentley, who plays Seneca Crane, the head game maker, think reality show director in the Hunger Games. He says, in the end, it's about rebellion, government oppression, and survival. But it's also very obvious that this reality is choreographed, that it is directed, that Seneca Crane is the author of the games. The degree to which the hero Katniss is aware that she has to play to the camera if she wants to survive is a very important part of the films. The games don't just happen, the conflict isn't merely organic, the interaction between competitors throughout the entire games from start to finish drive the action in the game. And this action is constructed by the head game maker for the benefit of himself and the influential members of society. But Katniss uses her awareness of this to create her own reality.
Attention, attention, tributes. There has been a slight rule change. The previous revision, allowing for 2 victors from the same district, has been revoked. Only 1 victor may be crowned. Good luck, and may the odds be ever in your favor.
Go ahead. One of us should go home. One of us has to die. They have to have their victor.
No. They don't. Why should they? No. Trust me. Trust me.
Together?
Together.
Okay. 1,
2.
3.
Stop! Stop! Ladies and gentlemen, may I present the winners of the 74th Annual Hunger Games.
In many ways, fantasy films show us the perspectives of the various actors in these other worlds and expands our own reality. We begin to think that what if creating our reality is less about making ourselves feel safe, protected and in control, and more about trusting that we can be happy and at peace with the uncertainty of life no matter what occurs? That we can create our own peace despite the anarchy of our world. We see that fantasy films have come a long way as the magic of CGI has made it possible to present highly sophisticated otherworlds that appeal to audiences of all ages. Blockbuster movie franchises like Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings take us to the most fantastical, magical worlds we could ever imagine. We'll be looking at these in our next podcast. Thank you for watching.